whip this thing into shape. First thing was, remember, we don't need UCI name because the help file said we didn't need that. Again, how did we know? We read the manual, right? That's always good advice. Read the manual. It's a good place to start.
It may be worth noting that it says to do it when you're in a UCI script, right? Just because you pull up a random text controller into the design and think to yourself, oh, this is my UCI script, does not make it a UCI script, right?
That's a fair point.
Big distinction that this is a specific instance of the Lua engine that is embedded in the UCI automatically. That is what it means when it says UCI script, not just any script that happens to be running a UCI.
That's true, and that's fair. And maybe we take a second to actually talk about this in depth. So normally, if you use the block controller, you use the text controller, you need the scripting engine license to make use of those scripts. UCI scripts actually don't incur a licensing situation. They just work. And part of that is part of our recognition that we really do want to be able to use a scripting solution to run our UCI. And so the license really just sort of sets a wall over what we can and can't do with this UCI script, i.e. the script that is bolted onto the UCI. Basically, you can do anything and everything to control Q-SYS from within a UCI script. You just can't do things that like control third-party devices and stuff. That's going to require full scripting and that extra license. All that being said, Nate, that was a good point. So we got rid of that argument we don't need. Our page name, you may remember, is over here. It is page 1, and it should be entered as a string. So we're going to put double quotes, and we're going to put page 1. So Jeff, why not make that a variable and pass that in? You could. But for our purposes, it's never going to change. So we're going to leave that alone. Also, remember, one of the caveats I gave at the beginning of this course is that we are going to take the scenic route all the way up the mountain, which means that we're spending a lot of time talking about things that you might feel are kind of really fundamental. Trust me, we're going up the mountain. We're going to get there. But I don't want to just assume that everybody is ready to go up the mountain directly. So we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about fundamental things. The other thing that's going to happen is normally when we write scripts, we're going to want to have a certain kind of organization system to our scripts. And many of you, if you've done much coding, you would probably adopt a paradigm that says put constants and variables at the top, and then have function definitions, and then have everything else underneath. And truthfully, that is a wonderful way to organize your code, and that is how I generally do it. For this course, we're going to write code linearly. It's just going to go down the page. We're not going to take a lot of effort to go reorganize things. We're going to leave it right going straight down the page in the same way that we developed it, again, so that when you go back and you look, you can see how all of these things went together, and it's a little more straightforward to you when you go to reconstruct things mentally. All right, moving forward. So we have updated the page to be page 1. Our layer name is actually over here. That's the A1, B1, C1, Z1 business. We are going to make A1 underscore room. You got to spell it correctly, right? Capitals matter, underscores matter, spaces matter. It's got to exactly match. If you don't make it exactly match, it's not going to work because it's not going to know the difference between capital A1 and lowercase a1. Those are two totally different things. That's just how it works. Visibility is going to be one of those Booleans. It's either going to be true or false. Since this is the nav room button, Nate, what do you think? Do we want this to show or not show?
Well, we're showing the room visibility. Yeah, we want this layer to be turned on.
Yeah, so true or false?
True.
You got it. So true, keyword true.
But not in quotes.
But not in quotes, because quote true, not a Boolean. Quote true is a string, and it's kind of a pernicious error because it's like, It says true. Again, it's kind of like the spelling thing. Computers take you super straightforwardly. They do exactly what you ask them to do, exactly the way you ask them to do it. This is not like parenting, where you can tell your kid exactly the right way to do the job, and they go off and they do it exactly the way they thought was better, which often comes with humorous and or expensive consequences.
And trauma, apparently.
We're still paying that hospital bill. Anyway, and then lastly, transition type. Again, there were many options. You saw them in the help file. For me, I'm going to choose none. As a string, it's a string argument. We're passing in the string none. And the reason that I like none is because I like it to snap on and snap off. It just means do it immediately. If you want to get extra fancy later, knock yourself out. So that's good. We're on the right track. We're going to go a little faster, right? Normally, if we were doing the intermediate class, we talk through how many more times do we need to do this. We're going to start assuming that you're in the right class. We're going to do this 4 times, Nate, right? Once for each layer. So Control-C, Control-V, Control-V. And then we're going to come through and update these things. B1 underscore displays. Okay, C1 underscore cameras.
Just saying, updating all these layer names real easy when they're all named Nate.
By the way, for those of you who are following at home, if you try to name them all Nate, gonna probably not work because it's gonna get super confused. Okay, so there we are. We have fixed all of those, A1, B1, C1, Z1. That looks good, but I have these set to all be true. That is not correct. Obviously, I want the B1 displays layer to be false. And I also want the C1 layer to be false. But what about that base layer, Nate?
Yeah, I want that to be false too. I want the whole UCI to just vanish.
No, you do not want to do the whole Hotel California thing to yourself. Leave the base layer on. Remember, our nav buttons are on the base layer. We always want to be able to check out.
So why bother putting it in this list at all?
True. That is a thing. So basically, this is us covering our butts. We always want it to be the case that it's visible. So we are just asserting that it's always going to be the case that whatever one of these nav buttons I press, I'm always going to make sure that that base layer is turned on. And technically, if you want to think about it this way, we are, this version of the code is us thinking about what state of affairs do we want to be the case. When I press BTN nav room, I want the room layer on, I want the displays layer off, I want the cameras layer off, and I want the base layer on. That's what this gets me. This is right here, line 2. Set the layers appropriately. Awesome.
And that can easily happen too. When you're back in in design mode and you are making changes to your UCI and you turn on the base layer and you put on a graphic or a background or something like that, you might accidentally turn that layer invisible because you're turning layers on and off with your visibility as you're editing the UCI. If you accidentally left it invisible and then you deployed this system, well, guess what? This script will fix it for you.
Yeah.
First time you press a navigation button, it'll turn it back on.
All right. Let's try to do line 3. Set the button feedback appropriately. Set the button feedback appropriately. All right, cool. Let's do that. Line 11. Well, what are the names of our buttons? Where do we find our buttons? Remember, each script keeps a list of its controls. The name of that list is controls. So again, I typed C, I typed O. It said, do you want controls? I said, I sure do. I hit tab, it typed it in. So then I hit dots. And I'm going to wind up having, well, I want nav rooms dot boolean, right? And again, all I typed was dot and B, and it's like boolean. I said, yes, tab, and it finished typing it in. It even capitalized boolean the way it's supposed to so that it works. And we're going to set it equal to true. Similarly, controls.btnnavdisplays.boolean is going to be false. And controls.btnnavcameras.boolean is also going to be false. Okay, now, seriously, if you were watching my fingers and you were watching what I was typing, you would notice that I typed the entirety of controls.btnnavcameras.boolean equals false with, I typed like the C and maybe the O, and I hit tab, and I hit dot, and I hit B, and it's like, yep, and I hit tab. Like, again, right, the speed is coming from using the autocomplete.
And that's because we're using the VS Editor mode, right?
Yes.
If we were still in that legacy mode that we did in the very first video. If you're jumping to this point in the video and you're like, why doesn't mine do it?
Yes.
You gotta fix that.
You gotta fix it. You gotta fix it. You've got to not use the legacy editor. There's nothing wrong with the legacy editor. It just doesn't come with any of the helps. Anyway, there we are. Controls.btn, all those buttons, the .booleans, again, true, false, false. Again, matching the state of affairs of the layers that we want. And then we want to send some debug info to our window.
Yeah.
Here's
my window's full of bugs right now.
I'm sure they are. Here's how we do it. We're going to use the function called print. Print is one of the most powerful functions in the Lua environment. It will print to your debug window. What's the debug window? It will pop open when we hit go. In the script, you'll see it. We'll do it here in just a second. So what do we want to print? We're actually going to populate the argument list here in the print function. So print parentheses. So, and you notice how the cursor is on the inside there. We're going to print the string, so double quotes, set UCI to room. And with that, we'll hit save. And there we are. We have 16 lines of code, 4 of which are just us making a game plan. So now if we hit go, F6, notice that we have our debug window down here at the bottom. And particularly recall how we left that UCI. We left it in a sad state of affairs. It has all of these layers on top of each other. You hit the button and notice how it cleans itself up. Perfect. Did yours work, Nate?
Of course. But the other buttons aren't working. What's wrong with the other buttons?
We haven't programmed them yet, Nate. I think it's time for us to take a little break. I'll see you in the next video.